Nathan Brooks sat in a cozy chair, sipping tea as sunlight poured through the large windows of Emily Dawson's countryside home. The room smelled faintly of lavender and old books, with shelves lining the walls filled with faded spines and dusty trinkets. Nathan had come here to learn about humanity's journey toward peace, but he didn't expect to feel so intrigued by the woman sitting across from him. Emily was older now, her silver hair tied neatly into a bun, but her eyes still carried the spark of someone who had seen and done extraordinary things. "I don't know how much help I'll be," Emily said, leaning back in her chair. Her voice was calm, though there was a hint of hesitation in it. "It's been decades since those days." "You're too modest," Nathan replied with a smile. He opened his notebook, ready to jot down every word she said. "You were at the center of everything. The Pax Terra movement, the treaties, all of it. People say you helped change the course of history." Emily chuckled softly, shaking her head. "History makes it sound like we did something grand. In reality, it was messy, chaotic, and full of mistakes. But yes, I suppose I played a part." She paused for a moment, staring out the window as if gathering her thoughts. Outside, birds chirped happily, and the distant hum of bees floated through the air. For a brief second, Nathan wondered if she would refuse to continue. But then she turned back to him, her expression thoughtful. "It wasn't always peaceful, you know," she began. "When I was younger, Earth was on edge. Nations still distrusted each other deeply, even after signing agreements promising unity. There were factions, powerful ones, that wanted control over humanity's future. Two leaders stood out above the rest: Daniel Hayes and Rachel Monroe. They had very different ideas about where humanity should go, and their rivalry kept everyone tense." Nathan nodded, scribbling notes furiously. He'd read about Daniel and Rachel before, but hearing Emily talk about them made them feel more real somehow. "Daniel believed in progress through strength," Emily continued. "He thought humanity needed strict rules and strong leadership to survive. Rachel, on the other hand, pushed for freedom and innovation. She argued that creativity and individual choice were what made humans special. Both had good points, but their methods clashed constantly." "And you?" Nathan asked, looking up from his notebook. "Which side were you on?" Emily hesitated again, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "I wasn't on anyone's side. Not really. My job was to find a middle ground, to stop things from spiraling out of control. I worked with a small team trying to keep the peace while figuring out how to make both sides see reason. But something happened, didn't it?" Nathan pressed gently. He could sense there was more beneath the surface, something darker lurking in her memories. Emily sighed, her gaze drifting once more to the window. "Yes, something happened. Something no one saw coming. It changed everything. For better or worse, I'm still not sure. But if you want to understand why humans shun war today, you need to hear the whole story." Nathan leaned forward, captivated. Whatever she was about to share, he knew it would be worth listening to. Emily took a deep breath, her hands resting on the wooden table as she prepared to dive deeper into the past. The room grew quieter, as if even the birds outside had paused to listen. Nathan watched her intently, his pen hovering over the notebook, ready to capture every word. "At first, things seemed manageable," Emily began, her voice steady, but tinged with sadness. "The treaties were holding, and people were hopeful. But beneath the surface, tensions were growing. Daniel Hayes and Rachel Monroe couldn't agree on anything, and their followers were just as divided. It was like two storms brewing on opposite sides of the horizon, waiting to collide." She paused, collecting her thoughts before continuing. Daniel's faction believed in building massive defense systems, weapons that could protect Earth from any threat, whether it came from within or beyond. They argued that humanity needed to be strong to survive. Rachel, however, saw those projects as a waste of resources. She wanted to focus on education, science, and exploring space. To her, the future wasn't about fighting. It was about discovering new possibilities. Nathan nodded, jotting down notes. He could already picture the clash between the two leaders, each convinced they were right. "So, what happened next?" he asked, his curiosity growing. Emily sighed, her eyes distant. "For a while, we managed to keep things under control. There were debates, protests, and heated arguments, but nothing violent. Then came the incident at the orbital station, Freedom 1. It was supposed to be a symbol of unity, a place where scientists and diplomats from all over the world worked together. But one day, it was attacked." Nathan froze, his pen stopping mid-sentence. "Attacked? By who?" "That's the question everyone asked," Emily replied, her tone heavy. "Official reports claimed Rachel's faction was responsible. Evidence surfaced, communications, weapons signatures, but something didn't add up. I was part of a small group tasked with investigating the attack, and the more we dug, the murkier things became." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "We found traces of technology that didn't match anything humans had built. At first, we thought it might be experimental gear stolen from one side or the other. But then Alex Carter, a brilliant engineer I worked with, discovered something shocking. The tech wasn't human at all." Nathan's eyes widened. "You mean aliens?" Emily nodded slowly. "That's exactly what we realized. Someone, or something, out there was manipulating us. They wanted us to fight each other, to weaken ourselves so they could swoop in and take over. It was terrifying to think about, but it explained so much: the divisions, the mistrust, the constant push toward conflict." "And did you tell anyone?" Nathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We tried," Emily admitted, her gaze dropping to the table. "But no one wanted to believe us. People were too angry, too scared. Blaming Rachel's faction was easier than accepting the truth. So, we had to act on our own. Alex and I reached out to others who might help, even if it meant working with former enemies." She looked up at Nathan, her eyes filled with determination. "That's when everything changed. We realized that if humanity was going to survive, we'd have to put aside our differences and face this threat together. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And in the end, it might have saved us all." Nathan sat back in his chair, stunned by the weight of her words. This story was far bigger and stranger than he had imagined. Emily's voice softened as she continued, her hands clasped tightly on the table. The room seemed quieter now, as if the gravity of her words had silenced even the rustling leaves outside. Nathan leaned forward, his pen moving steadily across the page, trying to capture every detail. "After we discovered the alien interference," Emily said, her tone thoughtful, "we knew we couldn't handle it alone. Alex and I needed help, people who could see the bigger picture, even if they didn't trust each other. That's when we reached out to Marcus Lane." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Marcus Lane? Wasn't he one of Daniel Hayes' top soldiers?" "Yes, he was," Emily confirmed with a nod. "At first, Marcus refused to listen. He thought we were wasting his time or trying to trick him. But when Alex showed him the evidence, the alien tech, we saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. It wasn't easy, but eventually he agreed to join us. Not because he trusted us, but because he wanted answers." "And what about Rachel's side?" Nathan asked, scribbling notes. "We approached Sofia Rivera," Emily replied. "She was a diplomat working closely with Rachel Monroe. Sofia was skeptical at first, too. She accused us of trying to frame her faction for something they didn't do. But when we explained the situation and showed her proof, she began to understand the stakes. In the end, she agreed to work with us, though reluctantly." Nathan paused, glancing up from his notebook. "So you had people from both sides working together. That must have been difficult." "You have no idea," Emily said with a wry smile. "Marcus and Sofia barely spoke to each other at first. Every meeting felt like walking through a minefield. But we didn't have time for arguments. The aliens were still out there, watching, waiting. We had to act quickly." She took a sip of her tea, her expression turning serious. Our first step was to gather more information. Alex believed the aliens were using some kind of hidden base, a mothership, maybe, to coordinate their attacks. If we could find it, we might be able to stop them. But getting close to that kind of technology wasn't going to be easy. Nathan nodded, imagining the challenges they must have faced. What did you do next? We split into teams, Emily explained. Marcus led a group tasked with infiltrating a secure facility where we thought the aliens had left behind more clues. Meanwhile, Sophia worked on keeping tensions on Earth from boiling over. People were scared, and rumors were spreading like wildfire. Her job was to calm things down without revealing the truth. And what about you and Alex? Nathan asked. We stayed focused on analyzing the alien tech, Emily said. Alex spent hours poring over data, trying to figure out how their weapons worked. It was exhausting, but he finally came up with a plan. He designed a device, a kind of countermeasure that could disrupt the alien systems. The problem was, we'd need to get close to their base to use it. Nathan frowned. That sounds dangerous. It was, Emily admitted. But we didn't have a choice. Time was running out. The aliens were growing bolder, launching smaller attacks to test our defenses. If we didn't act soon, they might have decided to invade outright. She paused, her gaze distant. In the end, Alex volunteered to go. He knew the risks, but he also knew no one else could operate the device as well as he could. Marcus and Sophia argued against it, but Alex insisted. He said humanity's survival was worth the risk. Nathan sat back, feeling a lump form in his throat. Did it work? Emily hesitated, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It did, but not without a cost. Alex gave everything to make sure the mission succeeded. When we returned to Earth, we carried his memory with us, and because of his sacrifice, we were finally able to expose the truth, not just about the aliens, but about how easily fear and division can be used against us. The room fell silent as Nathan absorbed her words. This story was far more than history. It was a lesson humanity would never forget. Emily's voice grew quieter as she continued, her hands resting on the table. The room felt heavy with the weight of her words, and Nathan sat motionless, his pen hovering over the notebook. He could sense that this part of the story was the most painful for her to tell. When Alex made the decision to go, Emily began, her tone steady but tinged with sadness. We all knew it might be the last time we saw him. He spent the night before the mission going over every detail, checking and rechecking the device he had built. Marcus and Sophia stayed with him, though none of us spoke much. It wasn't just fear, it was respect. We all knew what Alex was giving up. Nathan nodded, his eyes fixed on her. What happened when they got to the alien base? It wasn't easy, Emily replied, her gaze distant. The mothership was hidden deep in space, cloaked so well that even our best sensors couldn't detect it until we were almost on top of it. Marcus led the team that infiltrated the ship. They fought their way through corridors filled with strange mechanical drones, guardians the aliens had left behind. Every step was dangerous, but Marcus never hesitated. He knew what was at stake. She paused, taking the shaky breath. Meanwhile, Alex stayed focused on the device. He carried it with him, knowing it was humanity's only chance. When they finally reached the control room, the heart of the mothership, Alex told the others to hold back. He said he needed to get close to the core to activate the device, and that there was a good chance it wouldn't work without sacrificing himself. Nathan's hand tightened around his pen. Did they try to stop him? They argued, Emily said softly. Marcus especially. He didn't want Alex to go alone. But Alex was firm. He said it was the only way. In the end, they had no choice but to let him do it. Marcus and the others held off the drones while Alex moved toward the core. Her voice cracked slightly as she continued. I'll never forget what Alex said before he activated the device. He turned to Marcus and Sophia and told them, Make sure this counts." Then he pressed the button. The device emitted a pulse, a wave of energy that disrupted the alien systems. It worked exactly as Alex had planned. But the explosion, it consumed him. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, and she wiped them away quickly. When it was over, the mothership began to collapse. Marcus and the others barely made it out alive. They returned to Earth carrying Alex's memory, along with the proof we needed to expose the truth about the aliens. Nathan swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. How did people react when they found out? At first, there was disbelief, Emily admitted. People didn't want to believe that an outside force had been manipulating them. But once we showed them the evidence, the alien tech, the recordings from the mission, they couldn't deny it anymore. The revelation brought everyone together in a way nothing else could. For the first time, humanity realized that our divisions only made us weaker. If we wanted to survive, we had to stand united. She sighed, leaning back in her chair. In the months that followed, nations began dismantling their armies. Resources once used for war were redirected toward exploration, science, and improving life on Earth. The Pax Terra era truly began, not because of treaties or agreements, but because of what we had learned. Fear and mistrust had nearly destroyed us, but unity saved us. Nathan closed his notebook, his mind racing. This story was more than history. It was a reminder of how fragile peace could be, and how precious it was. "Do you think humanity will ever forget what happened?" he asked quietly. Emily shook her head. "I hope not. As long as we remember Alex's sacrifice and the lessons we learned, we'll never go back to the way things were." The room fell silent, the weight of her words lingering in the air. Emily's voice softened as she continued, her hands resting quietly on the table. The sunlight streaming through the window had shifted, casting long shadows across the room. Nathan sat still, his notebook closed now, knowing this part of the story didn't need to be written down, it needed to be felt. After Alex's sacrifice, Emily began, her tone thoughtful but heavy. Everything changed. The truth about the aliens brought humanity together in ways no one could have predicted. It wasn't just about stopping the immediate threat. It was about realizing how close we had come to destroying ourselves. Fear and division had been our greatest weaknesses, and now we understood that. She paused, her gaze drifting to the window. Outside, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. The first step was dismantling the weapon systems. Nations agreed to stop building tools of war and instead focus on creating tools for peace. Factories that once produced tanks and missiles were repurposed to build satellites, medical equipment, and machines for exploring space. It was a slow process, but people were eager to move forward. Nathan nodded, imagining the shift from conflict to cooperation. What about Daniel Hayes and Rachel Monroe? What happened to them? Emily sighed, her expression bittersweet. They both played important roles in the transition, though not always willingly. Daniel struggled at first. He couldn't let go of the idea that strength meant power. But over time, he came to see that true strength lies in unity. Rachel, on the other hand, embraced the change immediately. She became one of the loudest voices advocating for exploration and innovation. In a way, they balanced each other out. And Marcus and Sophia? Nathan asked. What happened to them after everything? They stayed involved, Emily replied with a small smile. Marcus worked with the newly formed Global Unity Council, helping to oversee the transition from military structures to civilian-led organizations. Sophia focused on diplomacy, traveling the world to ensure that old rivalries didn't resurface. They never fully trusted each other, but they respected the work they were doing. And that was enough. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant. As for me, I stepped away from the front lines. After everything that happened, I needed time to heal. But I didn't disappear completely. I wrote reports, gave speeches, and helped document what we had learned. I wanted to make sure no one forgot why we chose peace or the cost of achieving it. Nathan hesitated before asking his next question. Do you think humanity will ever face another threat like the aliens? Emily's expression grew serious. I don't know. Space is vast, and we're still learning about what's out there. But if another threat does come, I believe we'll face it together. The Pax Terra era taught us that when we work as one, we're stronger than any enemy, whether it's from within or beyond. She paused, glancing at Nathan. That's why your work is so important. By sharing these stories, you're reminding people of where we've been and how far we've come. History has a way of repeating itself if we forget its lessons. Nathan nodded, feeling a deep sense of responsibility. I'll do my best to honor their sacrifices, he said quietly. Emily smiled faintly, her eyes softening. Good. That's all any of us can do, carry the torch and pass it on to the next generation. The room fell silent again, the weight of her words settling between them. Outside, the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon in shades of orange and pink. For a moment, neither of them spoke, letting the quiet speak for itself. The room grew dim as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over Emily's face. She sat quietly for a moment, her hands folded in her lap, as if gathering her thoughts. Nathan didn't rush her. He knew this part of the story, the legacy of peace, was just as important as everything that had come before. Years passed. Emily finally said, her voice soft but steady. The Pax Terra era became more than just a time of peace. It became a way of life. People began to see themselves not as citizens of separate nations, but as part of one human family. It wasn't perfect, of course. There were still disagreements, still moments of tension. But the old ways of solving problems, through violence and division, were gone. She paused, her gaze thoughtful. One of the biggest changes was how we viewed exploration. Before, space travel had been about competition, about reaching new worlds first and claiming them for ourselves. But after the alien threat, we realized that space wasn't something to conquer. It was something to understand, to share. We started building ships not for war, but for discovery. Teams of scientists, engineers, and explorers worked side by side, no matter where they came from. Nathan nodded, imagining the shift from fear to curiosity. What about the younger generation? Did they embrace this new way of thinking? Oh, absolutely, Emily replied with a small smile. Children growing up during the Pax Terra era never knew a world divided by borders or armies. For them, unity was natural. They dreamed of exploring distant stars, of meeting other intelligent beings, not as enemies, but as friends. Schools focused less on history lessons about battles and more on teaching cooperation and problem-solving. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes brightening. And then there was Alex's memorial. It became a symbol of everything we had achieved. A spaceport named in his honor was built near the site of the old orbital station, Freedom 1. Every ship that launched carried a plaque with his name, reminding everyone of the sacrifices made to secure our future. Nathan scribbled a note in his book, though he already knew he'd remember every word. Did you ever visit the memorial? He asked gently. Yes, Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. I go there often, especially on quiet days like this. Standing there, looking at the stars, I feel closer to him and to everyone who gave so much to make this world possible. She sighed, leaning back in her chair. Of course, not everyone agreed with the changes. Some people missed the old ways, the idea of power and control. But even they couldn't deny the benefits of peace. Diseases that once plagued parts of the world were eradicated. Hunger became a thing of the past. Technology advanced faster than ever before, not because we were competing, but because we were working together. Nathan hesitated before asking his next question. Do you think humanity will always stay united, or is it possible we'll fall back into old habits? Emily's expression grew serious. It's hard to say. Humans are complex. We're capable of great kindness, but also of great selfishness. But I believe the lessons we learned during the Pax Terra era will stay with us, As long as we remember why we chose peace and what it costs to get here, we'll find a way to keep moving forward. She looked at Nathan, her eyes filled with quiet determination. That's why stories like yours matter. You're not just writing history, you're shaping the future. By keeping these memories alive, you're helping ensure that humanity never forgets. The room fell silent again, the weight of her words lingering in the air. Outside, the first stars began to appear, twinkling faintly in the darkening sky. For a moment, neither of them spoke, letting the stillness wrap around them like a comforting blanket. The room was almost completely dark now, the only light coming from a small lamp on the table between Emily and Nathan. The soft glow illuminated Emily's face, highlighting the lines of wisdom etched into her skin. She sat quietly for a moment, as if savoring the stillness before speaking her final words. "Nathan," she began, her voice calm but filled with purpose, "when you write this story, I want you to focus on hope. Yes, there was loss. Alex's sacrifice, the fear we all felt. But in the end, humanity chose a better path. We chose peace, and that's what matters most." Nathan nodded, his pen resting in his hand. He had already filled pages with notes, but he knew this part of their conversation would stay with him forever. "I'll make sure people understand that," he said softly. "But how do you think future generations will see this era? Will they appreciate what was done?" Emily smiled faintly, her gaze drifting to the window where the stars now shone brightly. "Some will, and some won't. There will always be those who take peace for granted, who don't realize how fragile it is. But others, the curious ones, the dreamers, they'll look back and see it for what it was, a turning point, a moment when humanity decided to rise above its fears and divisions." She paused, her expression thoughtful. "You know, sometimes I wonder what Alex would think if he could see us now. Would he be proud? Would he feel like his sacrifice was worth it? I'd like to believe he would. Every time I look at the stars or hear about a new discovery, I think of him. His courage made all of this possible." Nathan leaned forward, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Do you ever wish you could tell him that? That his sacrifice wasn't in vain?" Emily chuckled softly, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Every day. But in a way, I think he already knows. The peace we have now, it's his legacy. And not just his. It belongs to everyone who worked together, who put aside their differences to fight for something greater than themselves." She took a deep breath, her voice growing firmer. "That's why I visit the spaceport named after him. It's not just a memorial. It's a promise to keep moving forward, to never stop exploring, learning, and growing. Every ship that launches carries a piece of Alex's spirit with it, reminding us of where we came from and where we're going." Nathan closed his notebook, feeling a sense of fulfillment. This story wasn't just about the past. It was about the future. "Thank you for sharing this with me," he said sincerely. "I'll do everything I can to honor their memories." Emily nodded, her smile warm and genuine. "I know you will. And remember, Nathan, peace isn't something we achieve once and then forget about. It's something we have to nurture every day. It's a choice, a commitment. As long as we keep making that choice, humanity will continue to thrive." The two sat in silence for a while longer, the weight of their conversation settling comfortably between them. Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly, dotted with countless stars. Somewhere out there, Emily thought, were mysteries waiting to be uncovered and challenges yet to be faced. But for now, Earth was safe, united, and full of promise. As Nathan prepared to leave, Emily walked him to the door. Before stepping outside, he turned to her one last time. "What's next for you?" he asked. Emily glanced back at the cozy room, then at the vast expanse of the countryside. "Oh, I'll keep writing, keep sharing stories. Maybe visit the spaceport again soon. Someone has to remind people of where we've been and how far we've come." With that, Nathan stepped into the cool night air, his mind buzzing with ideas. Behind him, Emily closed the door, leaving the quiet house to rest under the watchful gaze of the stars.